So many options, but how should you build this year's Heroes EZA units? How's it, everybody? Celtic Link here. We're back for another Dokkan battle video. In today's video, we are taking a look at this year's batch of EZA units for the Dragon Ball Hero celebration and trying to figure out what might be the best hidden potential system for each of the individual EZAs. We've got God Trunks, we've got MECHIKABURA, we've got Super Saiyan Zeno Vegeta and Zeno Goku, we've got the Super Saiyan 3 Gohanks, we've got the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, and we have the Super Saiyan VX. So we'll be going over each one of these, talking about their kits and how you should adjust or build their hidden potential if this is the first time you're grabbing copies of these guys from that EZA banner. After all, they did a major thing with these characters, and that is they removed the, well, they didn't remove their heroes restriction. They basically just allowed them to operate on other teams aside from heroes. They still have, some of them still have a slight heroes restriction, but they can also achieve a lot of that same passive by being on other various teams as well. So that may kind of impact some of the hidden potential that you guys have had already on them. So let's go ahead, let's start with the God Trunks. So God Trunks on his super attack effect is greatly raising attack and defense for the turn and causing immense damage to the enemy while sealing super attacks. He has key 1, attack and defense 50% per Dragon Ball Heroes or time traveler ally on the team. He has an additional attack and defense 100% with a great chance of performing a critical hit when performing a super attack. He also has an additional defense 50% when performing a super attack and randomly changes key spheres of a certain type to rainbow key spheres if all allies are Dragon Ball Heroes or time travelers. He also has 2 additional attacks, each of which has a 50% chance of becoming a super attack, and if all allies are heroes or time travelers. So not a whole lot of defensive mechanics going on here, but all of this does kind of add up, right? His offense ends up being really good, able to achieve, 18, 19, 20 million off his stats alone, and then if he procs his additional super attacks, he can achieve over 2.4 million defense, which is actually a lot of defense. That is enough for him to tank most supers in the game, barring a few new ones like Gogeta or Janemba. But it is enough for them to pretty much survive safely slot 2 or slot 3 in most cases. So given that, you have 2 options here for his hidden potential. Being that he is a tech type, he gets natural crit, right? Meaning if you fully invested in crit, he's got a 40% chance to crit if you fully invest 20 crit in him. 50% if you had skill orbs in him, which most people probably did beforehand, at least had a significant chunk, because he didn't have any crit built in. And even now, as you see here, he now has a 70% chance to perform a critical hit. Well, that means you don't need critical hit on this guy. That means you can actually focus your attention elsewhere. With a 70% chance of crit, you're going to be critting more often than you don't. So with that in mind, you can either go additional attack or dodge. I would say that additional attack for God Trunks is probably the preferred route. One, not only does it maximize his damage, but it maximizes his defense as well. As a tech type, he can get 15 nodes for a 30% chance, 40% chance if you go with your skill orbs as well on him. That is a pretty significant shot, and it is probably what he needs the most to achieve that level of defense. Even if you were to go full dodge, you're only granting yourself an extra 15, possibly 25% chance to dodge. So you gotta kind of weigh the options there. Do you take the 25% chance to dodge, or do you take the 40% chance to do the additional super? I would personally lean into additional attack, because not only would that give you the additional defense, as I mentioned before, it also gives you the additional offense, right? And then of course you can go sub evasion, right? Either one of those really works best for him given his new passive. He absolutely does not need crit. So let's talk about the other characters, right? We also have the MECHIKABURA, who got his EZA during this celebration. So he now is greatly raising his attack for infinite. He's also greatly raising his defense for 1 turn while lowering enemies' attack and defense. He has key 1 and attack and defense 200%. He has an additional attack and defense 100% when performing super attack. He randomly changes key spheres of a certain type to rainbow key spheres. He also has an additional 25% per key sphere obtained. He also has an additional 100% with 2 or more key spheres obtained. He also has an additional 100% with 2 or more STR attack 100% with STR or Fizz key spheres obtained, and an additional defense 100% with Tech or Int key spheres obtained. He recovers additional 10% additional HP and reduces damage received by 10% per rainbow key sphere obtained. Also launches an additional attack with 2 or more rainbow key sphere obtained. So you can see already he has one glaring absence from his kit, right? And that is critical hit. So that is actually kind of working in his favor, because as an AGL unit, he doesn't have innate crit, but he has this right here, additional attack built in, right? So as an AGL unit, he can hit up to 40% additional attack, and then if you go with your skill orbs, that would give him 50%. But I don't think that is the way to go. For him, I believe he needs critical hit. He doesn't have any built in, so as an AGL type, you want to invest as much as you can. 30% with your additional skill orbs, you can give him, you know, 40% there, which I think is what you need to go for. You can add in the additional attack for that extra attack that he can get to further raise his attack per turn. But I can tell you, right, on attack stackers, there's nothing worse on attack stackers than not being able to crit and actually deal damage with that attack that you're building up. So as an attack stacker, you definitely want some crit on him. So I would say for MECHIKABURA, primary crit, and then supplemental either additional attack for the extra chance to super, further increasing his defense and further increasing his offense, or dodge if you don't want to take that extra risk. Either one is up to you. Personally, I would go with the additional attack for the further attack raise, but that of course is up to you. All right, that brings us to the next one. The Super Saiyan Zeno Vegeta. This dude is actually phenomenal. He does a little bit of it all. He greatly raises attack and defense. That's a 50% raise per super. He has attack and defense 150%. He guards all attacks and launches an additional super attack for 1 turn. He has an additional 150% when there's another Vegeta's family or Heroes ally on the team. He also gives Vegeta's family key 3 and attack defense 50%. He's 50% support for Vegeta's family. He also has an additional 77% when performing super attack and launches an additional attack that has a 50% chance to become a super attack if there's another hero's ally attacking in the same turn or when facing an extreme class enemy. Either one works there. So really good. He has the possibility of doing 4 supers in a turn, which with greatly raising attack and defense per hit, that makes him build quite fast. Like, he can very easily achieve 1,000,000 defense by his second appearance. So, of course, you do want to take the most advantage of it as an attack and defense stacker. While he doesn't have much critical hit built into him, the additional supers will allow him to stack that defense more, as well as the offense, but you're not really using him for the offense, right? So it just allows him to stack that defense more and give him a little more staying power. So you definitely want to go additionals for him. As an int-type unit, however, he doesn't have natural additionals. In fact, his natural ability is dodge, which you don't, well, you could invest in him, but you want your primary to be additional attack. As an int type, he's going to get 15 nodes, which equates to 30%. So you do want to make sure you throw in that extra on the skill orbs to get him up to 40% chance of additional super attack, thereby further increasing his survivability through his additional super attacks, giving him that 50% raise per, right? Totaling in 200 if he actually gets them all. You could give him critical hit to ensure that he gets crits when he does attack, but I find that for him, it's probably not as necessary. More often than not, he's still not doing really big damage. He's just kind of, it's okay damage. So the crit could help, but you're not really using him for the damage on the team. You're using him for that defense. You could go sub evasion, that kind of works. It's, you know, for especially after that first turn when you lose that guaranteed additional for being turn 1, this evasion kind of helps just mitigate the chances of maybe dying to a stray super while he continues to get built up. So that's for the hidden potential for Vegeta. Moving on, we have the Fizz Goku. This guy has 100. He's basically the same thing as Vegeta, except, you know, for Goku's family. So really, I mean, the same applies for him as did for Vegeta. Heavy in on the additional attacks, either supplemental crit or evasion. Again, they don't need the crit because they're not dealing major damages, but you could definitely go with dodge to increase your further survivability in those chances that you may not get that extra additional. So up to you. Either one works for the supplemental, but definitely primary additional attack. All right, which brings us to our next unit, the Int Gohanks. This guy, upon EZA, is now greatly raising attack as a defense for the turn. He also is sealing super attack guaranteed. He has additional attack and defense 150%. He has an additional 150% when performing a super attack. He has an additional attack and defense 30% with each super attack performed, up to 150%. He also launches an additional super attack when there's another crossover ally attacking in the same turn, and has, or rather, when the enemy is attack down or defense down status. He performs a critical hit when there's another Super Saiyan 3 ally in the turn. So right there, we know we have additional super attacks, and we have additional, and we have guaranteed crit as long as you have Super Saiyan 3. So that really makes his hidden potential choice easy. Dodge. Dodge is the way to go for him. I would say primary dodge for this guy, since he already has built-in crit and guaranteed additional attacks up to 2 already on top of his guaranteed, so that's 3 supers. Give him the additional attack and he has a chance to do the 4. But I think for him, since he's already got enough built-in, go the evasion route. As an N-type unit, he can get up to 20%, meaning 30% chance to dodge if you fully invest in him. So I do think that's the way to go. And then supplemental additional attack, right? For an N-type unit with supplemental additional, you're going to be able to get around 15, which is still a 30% chance to dodge, so, or to do an additional attack, which is still pretty good. So for Gohanks, definitely recommend the full dodge agenda for that one. Not usually a fan of that, but for him, he's already got everything else he needs to be successful. Moving on to the Gotenks. Gotenks greatly raises attack and defense for the turn and lowers attack and defense. He has attack and defense 150%. He has an additional attack and defense 150% when performing super attack. He has an additional attack 30%, which each super attack perform up to 150%. He launches 2 additional attacks when there's another crossover ally. And he also performs a critical hit when there's another Super Saiyan 3. So again, same rules as the Gohanks. They have literally the same exact passive. Evasion is the proper way to go for this one, followed by supplemental additional attacks. As an AGL unit, he can get just under 20 with this one. I think it's like 11 or 13 he can get with this being a supplemental, which is still about 20% chance. So it's definitely going to be good. Combined with that 30% chance for an evasion. Finally, bringing us to one of the last units in this set, we have the Super Saiyan VX. VX is greatly raising defense and raising attack for the turn, so stacking defense. He's got attack and defense 150% and an additional attack and defense 150% when performing super attack, an additional 30% up to 150%, and chance performing a critical hit 20% with each super attack performed. He has Key 2 and launches an additional attack that has a 50% chance to become a super attack when there's another crossover or Super Saiyan's ally attacking in the same turn, and all attacks become critical hits, and launches an additional super attack when the target enemy is attacked down or defense down status, or stunned, or super attack is sealed. So he kind of has a lot going on. So for him, as a defense stacker, but also one that has built-in crits, honestly, since he is stacking rather than it just being the turn, I do think you want to go the additional route. It will help him achieve his passive much sooner. It will help him achieve that extra defense as he builds up much sooner. He can quickly get to over 2 million defense if given the time to get those proper additionals. So as an STR type unit, we know that he can get a max of 15, which equates to 30% for additional attacks. So you do want to make sure you give him the skill orbs to get him to that point, because that's the best he's going to get for additional attacks. All right, and finally bringing us to the last unit in this celebration, that is EZA, and that is the Int Zenopan. Zenopan is raising attack defense for the turn greatly and has a 50% chance of stunning. She has attack 140% and an additional 70% when performing a super attack. She has crossover allies key 3 and attack defense 40% and an additional 20% for heroes characters. So that is 60% chance for heroes characters. She has a great chance of performing a critical hit, great chance of evading an enemy's attack, and an additional defense 70% within the same turn each attack is evaded. She also has an additional attack defense 70% and all allies chance of performing a critical hit per crossover category ally attacking in the same turn 15%. So for her, again, like the Gohanks and the Gotenks, you want to lean into the evasion. As an N-type unit, full evasion, that's going to get her 20% chance, 30% if you invest the skill orbs. Now, why do I say that? Well, a lot of her passives is based on whether or not she can evade, so you want to further increase your chance. Now, reminder that the dodge doesn't actually stack right with whatever her innate dodge is, that's 70%, but it does create a separate 30% chance to roll the dice, which is very helpful for making sure she has that longevity within the runs and being able to protect herself. For her supplemental, I would definitely recommend going combo attack, getting around 11 to 15, depending on how much additionals you decide to give her. But I do think that those are the two best options for the Zenopan. So, to recap, the God Trunks, you want to go crit and additionals, because he has no built-in crit. For MECHIKABURA, same thing, you want to go, let me back that up. You want to go additionals and dodge, since he has built-in crit for God Trunks. For MECHIKABURA, you want to go crit, since he has no built-in crit, as well as giving a couple extra additionals for that extra chance to build his attack. For Xeno, Vegeta, and Goku, primary should be additionals followed by either dodge or crit. Either one works for them. For Gohanks and Gotenks, definitely want to make sure you're going the full dodge route on these guys, since they already have everything else built in. And then finally, Vegeta, as a stacking unit, do be sure that the primary focus of his is the additional attack, so he can greatly raise his defense more and more. And then lastly, we'll leave off the Pan. Alright, Pan, again, you want to further increase her ability to dodge, so that way she can get the critical hit off, since she does give her allies a chance of performing a critical hit, as well as having a 70% chance on her own. She doesn't need critical hit, so dodge and additionals for her. So guys, that is a lot to take in, but that is my recommendations for the hidden potential for this year's batch of Heroes EZA units. If you guys liked the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And in the comments down below, let us know, how would you build some of these EZAs? We're definitely curious to see what you guys would do in the comments down below. Otherwise, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and aloha.